Yuta's domain expansion finally revealed as we learned a secret plan to take down Sukuna once and for all. The King of Curses wants to kill everyone and force humanity to merge with Tengen, but first he has to fight Yuta, Rika, and Yuji inside of Yuta's insane domain. So let's talk about it. You guys know the drill. If you enjoy my JJK videos, you want to see more in the future, drop a quick like and comment for that YouTube algorithm. Man, real talk now, we are only like 2,000 subscribers away from 2 million, so do me a huge favor guys, subscribe right now. The previous chapter gave us the aftermath of the battle between Higuruma and Yuji versus Sukuna. For like 1/10 of a second back in chapter 247, it looked like Sukuna might actually be in trouble, as it seemed like Yuji might be able to stab him with the executioner's sword. And Higuruma literally like sacrificed his life to make this happen. But then, as soon as chapter 248 started, we saw that the attempt to stab Sukuna was ineffective. The executioner's sword simply kind of like shrunk and dissolved in Yuji's hand moments after Higuruma apparently died. The only consolation seemed to be that Sukuna lost his prized cursed object, and that for some reason Kirara and Ui were going through the trouble of collecting everyone's bodies from the battlefield and taking them back to Shoko. This includes the body of Higuruma and also the body of Gojo himself. This kind of gave us hope that maybe the sorcerers have some kind of plan to bring even severely injured fighters like Gojo back to life. There's no indication of how they might be able to do this exactly, but when you're a hardcore Gojo coper like me, even the smallest breadcrumb matters. In the last chapter, we also learned that Yuji already managed to master reverse curse technique, which is how he was able to heal himself after suffering a massive injury earlier on. A new rule was then suddenly added to the culling game, which stated that Megumi Fushiguro has the authority to activate the merger between humanity and Master Tengen. And since Sukuna is currently occupying Megumi's body, this means that Sukuna is the one with this authority. Now, initially, the sorcerers thought that Kenjaku's dream of merging humanity with Tengen in order to force the evolution of humanity was something that wouldn't interest Sukuna. But unfortunately, Sukuna confirmed that, yes, he also wants to do this. Sukuna plans to kill everyone in the culling game, activate the merger with Tengen, and then initiate the evolution of humanity. His motivations for this are not the same as Kenjaku. He doesn't care about Jujutsu experiments and the evolution of humanity, but he does wonder if the entity that emerges from the merger of humanity with Tengen could prove to be a worthy opponent for him. And so Sukuna, who doesn't care one bit about other people and sees them as only a source of entertainment, thinks it might be fun to see if the evolution of humanity might actually give him a truly worthy opponent for the first time in over 1,000 years. The last chapter ended with Yuta arriving to the battlefield and using Rika, the Queen of Curses, to attack Sukuna, the King of Curses. The new chapter starts off with a little flashback to the moment right after Yuta relieved Kenjaku of his head. With Kenjaku no longer in control of Geto's body, all the cursed spirits that the Geto body had stored within itself suddenly poured out and went on a rampage, and Yuta had to summon Rika in order to deal with them. While Yuta and Rika were dealing with the stampede of cursed spirits, Kenjaku's head was able to create the new rule about Megumi being able to initiate the merger between Tengen and humanity. We see that Tengen is now just a tiny caterpillar-esque cocoon. Tengen has been readied for the merger, and the cocoon was then sent flying all the way to Sukuna. Sukuna then grabbed the cocoon and devoured it. This is that light that we saw Sukuna grabbing and seemingly eating back in the last chapter. But even though Sukuna now has the power to activate the merging ritual, we know that he is planning to kill all the players in the culling game first. It seems like we probably won't have to worry about the merger happening anytime soon, since Sukuna isn't planning to willingly initiate it until he's completed his business by killing everyone in the culling game. This means that there is still time to stop Sukuna and save the world, if only someone can figure out a way to do it. After the new rule is added, Yuta hunts down Kenjaku's head and impales it upon his katana. However, Kenjaku isn't too troubled by his own defeat and death. He's glad that he got to have some fun with Takaba, and of course he is glad that Sukuna will become the successor of his will. And so Kenjaku's death seems to be confirmed now, but unfortunately his master plan lives on. I still can't believe that Kenjaku is seemingly dead, and yet we still didn't learn why he decided to become Yuji's mother, but it is what it is. Back in the present, Yuta notices that Sukuna's reverse curse technique output is starting to recover, and it's only logical to conclude that he will probably also be able to use his domain expansion again very soon. To make things worse, Higuruma has been taken out by Sukuna, and Yuta feels guilty because he couldn't stay on the battlefield and help. If he had stayed, then it's possible that Higuruma's plan to pierce Sukuna with the executioner's sword could have worked. But Yuta couldn't stay because he had to be the one to defeat Kenjaku, because only Rika could deal with the avalanche of cursed spirits that were released from Geto's body upon Kenjaku's death. Yuta then launches a frontal assault on Sukuna using both Rika and his sword, but Sukuna is able to dodge and avoid serious injury. However, as the 2-on-1 battle continues, Yuta does manage to land some blows on Sukuna, including a powerful punch to Sukuna's gut, where that second mouth of his is located. Yuta is definitely holding his own in battle, but at the same time, he's not really making any major inroads. Sukuna is still standing strong, and the longer Yuta waits to end the battle, the longer Sukuna will have to recover his cursed energy levels and initiate his domain expansion. Time is on Sukuna's side, not Yuta's, so Yuta has to act right now. Yuta then accepts the responsibility for what happened to Higuruma, because he did want to be the one to finish Kenjaku off with his own hands. He bears responsibility for Higuruma's death, and so he must be the one to finish this, and he will finish it by revealing his domain expansion. As a shocked Sukuna looks on, Yuta and Sukuna find themselves inside what looks like a brutal medieval samurai training ground. The domain is full of katanas that are sticking out of half-broken cross-shaped pillars that are presumably used for some kind of combat training. The official name of Yuta's domain will be confirmed once we get the official translations, but the initial translations give the name as True Love, which I think is an extremely fitting name for Yuta's domain given his backstory with Rika. Sukuna knows that this domain is no joke, and so he uses Hollow Wicker Basket to protect himself from the guaranteed hit effect of Yuta's True Love. As you might recall, Hollow Wicker Basket is an ancient anti-domain technique that is a sort of predecessor to Simple Domain. And in the past, we've seen Reggie Star and Hajime Kashimo using this same technique. But just because Sukuna is protecting himself from the guaranteed hit of Yuta's domain doesn't mean he is safe from Yuta altogether. And so Yuta launches another attack on the King of Curses. Yuta uses one of the swords inside his domain to attack with Thin Ice Breaker, the technique he copied from Takako Uro. At first it looks like Sukuna didn't suffer that much damage, but after the technique takes its full toll, Sukuna realizes that he actually suffered some real damage to his face. After this attack, Yuta's sword seems to shatter and disappear as if it was used up. Which makes me wonder whether every single one of the dozens of swords inside the domain might contain the ability to use one of the techniques that Yuta has copied in the past. Maybe he can only use each technique once and then the sword disappears, at least until next time he opens his domain expansion. Now, that would be a pretty great feature of Yuta's domain. He just keeps grabbing different swords and Sukuna has no idea with which technique is gonna be hit next. Sukuna quickly realizes what the strategy to defeat him actually is. He knows that Yuta has the power to copy the techniques of others, and he knows that the guaranteed hit of the domain is forcing Sukuna to continue using Hollow Wicker Basket, which means that he has to use half of his arms and mouths to perform that technique and can't use them for other things. So Yuta will continue to attack Sukuna with different swords and different techniques, which will keep the rest of his arms busy, while the main strategy will actually be to attack Sukuna's soul, because guess who else is currently inside of this domain? That's right, Yuji Itadori, the sorcerer who has the ability to grab the soul of his opponent and attack it directly. The plan of the sorcerers is to use Yuji to detach Sukuna's soul from Megumi's body and then to destroy Sukuna without hurting Megumi. Sukuna now understands that Yuji also has an important role to play in this fight. It's not just Yuta and Rika versus Sukuna, it's Yuta, Rika, and Yuji versus the King of Curses. And it's all happening on Yuta's home turf, inside his domain. This is absolutely epic. We finally see Yuta's domain expansion. Yuji is finally assuming an important role in the battle after spending so much time on the sidelines. And what makes this turn of events even better is the fact that we now know that Sukuna is personally bothered by Yuji. As we learned in the last chapter, he is kind of jealous of Yuji and his unbreakable ideals, something that Sukuna himself never had and never needed to have, and so this fight will actually be personal for Sukuna. Normally, fights are never personal to him, he never takes it as anything more than entertainment. But this time it's different because of Yuji and how well Sukuna got to know Yuji while sharing the same body. But even though the sorcerers now seem to have a good plan, and even though even Sukuna seems kind of worried, I still think that this is kind of too good to be true. Every time it looks like Sukuna might be at a disadvantage, Gege smashes our hopes to pieces as Sukuna ends up turning the tables on the sorcerers again and again. I feel like something else has to happen to really ensure that the heroes can actually win. Something like Maki entering the domain and making it a 4v1, or Yuta somehow managing to recreate the Executioner's sword within his domain, or my boy Gojo coming back to life. Yeah baby, Gojo Copers forever. Speaking of Gojo, check out my video on the biggest controversy in Jujutsu Kaisen, the big Gojo drama that divided the fandom, link on screen and in the description. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like to let me know. And we are only like 2,000 subscribers away from hitting 2 million. Do me a huge favor and subscribe right now.